I had no intention to do as many UFO videos as I have, but like many, I started down that path and ended up falling down a rabbit hole. Well, I think a more accurate statement is that I fell down and found myself in a rabbit labyrinth. Perhaps you can relate. What a mess. My first subscriber suggested I take a look into the declassified CIA documents that are published on the CIA's website for some content inspiration. I took him up on it, and man, was he ever right. I came across a 186-page report by the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena from May of 1964, and couldn't believe what I was reading. No doubt many, if not most UFO fanatics are familiar with this report. It's new to me though. It's an eye-opener to say the least. I'm going to spend some time on it today. For many of you, this will be a reminder of just how much credible information is out there on the phenomena. The main conclusion I drew was that this phenomenon is by no means new or unique. In fact, I think it may be ageless and, frankly, ubiquitous. The National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, or the NICAP, is a non-profit UFO research group that was established in the 1950s. Its heyday, as far as I could tell, was in the 1960s, and peaked with this classified report that was presented to the CIA, who, at the time, I believe classified the document. The CIA approved it for release decades later in April of 2001, mere months before that fated date we are all so familiar with. The report is divided up into 14 sections, each of which contains mind-blowing accounts, in stark black and white, of encounters with the phenomena by highly credible observers. The report classifies observers in one of four categories. The first category, trained or experienced, which contains observations by scientists and professional pilots. The second, good, private pilots and police authorities. The third is average, other citizens deemed reliable. And the final is about radar accounts, but no visuals. I'm going to focus on the good accounts. There's literally hundreds of them documented. The first one that jumped out at me occurred in North Dakota on October 1st, 1948. It was observed by a pilot and the control tower operators. It states there was a dogfight between a UFO and a National Guard plane that involved intricate maneuvers and head-on passes before the UFO was observed shooting up and out of sight. There's so little information documented, but there's so much to unpack here. For the life of me, I don't understand why the single account was not enough to cause a tremendous amount of uproar and inquiry. The US was just dusting themselves off from the world's largest ever conflict, and the horrors of Pearl Harbor were still fresh in everyone's minds. Yet here's an unknown aerial vehicle clearly invading US airspace, continental airspace at that, and it gets nothing more than a passing mention in an obscure report. It's amazing, but moving on. Further down the list is a report from Wonsan, Korea in January of 1952. A UFO was observed moving with a bomber for 5 minutes in clear view before shooting off on a steep angle. I can only imagine what that bomber crew must have thought. They were neck deep in the Korean War and had a target on their backs. Their nerves must have been frayed, and they could have misinterpreted what they saw, but the phenomenon kept pace with them for an entire 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a long time to be staring straight at something that may very well be from another world. The next account popped out at me, not because of how odd it was, but because of how familiar it sounded. In Rapid City, South Dakota in 1953, a USAF F-84 chased a UFO, then turned back, but the UFO followed. A second jet gave chase, but turned back and the UFO continued on course. It was observed by pilots as well as the ground crew. This sounds like a paraphrasing of the now infamous experience Lieutenant Commander David Fravor had while serving for the USS Nimitz. His experience, I am learning, is by no means unique. In Washington, D.C., on June 13, 1952, a pilot observed a ball of light. When the pilot switched on his lights, the UFO took off, going up and away. In northern Japan on December 29, 1952, a circular vehicle paralleled the USAF F-84. When the jet tried to close in, the UFO sped away, disappearing in seconds. At a Florida missile range on March 24, 1954, a light source was observed by pilot and ground crew. A UFO hovered at 3,000 feet, then sped away at incredible speeds after a jet attempted to intercept it. In the Far East in December of 1956, an oddity appeared on ground crew radar. They were experiencing radar interference. A USAF F-86 was dispatched to investigate. When the jet approached the UFO, it shot off, again with incredible speeds. I shouldn't be surprised by this, but I am. The new series, Unidentified, Inside America's UFO Investigation, made a public call for military personnel to submit personal UFO experiences. According to history, they received thousands of stories. The next account I chose by literally just scrolling randomly with my eyes closed, just pointed somewhere on my screen. In May of 1961, near Rio de Janeiro, a private pilot as well as airport observers witnessed a UFO hovering near the airport. The private pilot approached the craft to investigate. Then the UFO ascended with incredible speed to the level of the plane and circled the plane. And get this, the plane followed it for over an hour. Anyone interested in this topic needs to read this report. It's dense, but few sentences are superfluous. Perhaps this is revealing just how naive I am. The report is not restricted to just single vehicle observations either. There are dozens of accounts by credible observers witnessing what appears to be entire fleets of them in American airspace. A civil defense official in Baltimore in 1954 witnessed 14 crafts flying in formation near an airliner. I doubt what he saw was a flock of seagulls. In August of 1955, in Birmingham, England, an ex-Navy officer witnessed 15 crafts flying in formation as well, in groups of 3. And in August of 1954, hundreds of people witnessed 15 triangular and semicircle aircrafts that sped away when pursued. I've covered but a small fraction of what this report documents. It's quite incredible. I'm going to spend some more time with it and see if I can learn some more details about some of the more startling accounts. Thank you for listening. If you like my work, please hit that like button and consider subscribing. And remember, love is the answer, whatever that means.